Netherlands, 2-1. Spain wins this one. Spain, the top of a lot of people's list, number 2 in my power rankings. We'll get to who was number 1. But they came through this one. It was not the most beautiful Spanish performance, but ultimately this Spanish team continues to roll on. We've said time and time again, and Rob Stone and I were talking about it on set, that this is a team that 4 years ago wasn't ready for prime time. They are absolutely ready for prime time right now. And even though it took them a little bit longer and took them the 120, they ultimately got the job done.
They are the best team in this tournament, but this game was also a cautionary tale.
Okay.
It reminded me of a match I referenced in our last podcast, the quarterfinals of the Euros against England, in which they played England off the park for the first 80 minutes or so, but were only up 1-0 when they should have been up by a lot more. And then they surrendered a late equalizer to Ella Toon. The game went into extra time. Georgia Stanway scored. England ended up winning 2-1. And it almost happened again here because the way they outplayed the Dutch in the first half, this game should have been done and dusted. It wasn't. They do get the penalty goal, so they go up 1-0. But then Stephanie van der Graaf equalized, and all of a sudden Spain find themselves in extra time in a match in which they were far superior for the majority of it. They do end up getting the winner with Paraguayo, 19-year-old Barcelona player, one of the breakout stars on this team. So they survive. But again, it just goes to show you that they have to be careful sometimes that all that possession, all that domination, it has to translate into more on the scoreboard.
I think this is a fascinating team, not just of what they are on the field, but also what they are off the field. And Jorge Vilda and that whole saga of how he has come to be, and the success that he has had. I mean, even ultimately in the goal from Paraguayo, he switched her to the opposite side, and that ultimately was the result in terms of the goal for the 19-year-old. But again, it bears repeating. This is a guy who the Federation backed when they very easily could have gotten rid of and said, look, it's just easier and we will get rid of you. This is a guy who still to this day did whatever he did that rubbed a portion of players the wrong way, and so much so that, the Quince, the 15, and a large group are not here. So think of how good they could be. And yet he has brought them historically to their best finish so far. And while they weren't ready for primetime 4 years ago, to your point, now I got David Mosse sitting next to me saying that this is the best team in the tournament. Pretty amazing stuff.
And by the way, Caldente, the player who converted the penalty, was one of the 15 who mutinied, and then there were 3 that came back. She was one of them. Bonmati was another. So getting some of those players back has proven to be very crucial for them in this tournament.
But it is an amazing story. And when I say they could have gotten rid of him, because we have seen, I mean, you can look at France or others where they just say, okay, this is not happening from the player's perspective, and this is the disruptive type of person to have here. Whether it's justified or not, sometimes the easiest solution is to change the coach because you can't change all the players.
A couple of notes in this one. There was a play in the second half I want to get your take on.
Okay.
Berenstein, and that's what we're going with, right?
Berenstein.
Berenstein,
yes,
I'm sorry.
the bear in the Stein is what we
That was a point of great debate today,
yes.
how to pronounce her name. So Berenstein, taken down in the box by Paredes.
Yep.
Referee whistles for a penalty. VAR calls her over. She comes back and overturns it. I thought that was a strange overturn. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it was. You think CNN's a joke. I mean, that was a joke of a call. No, it's not as bad as CNN. But that was a joke of a call because I thought it was a foul. And not only was it a foul, but because the defender wasn't actually making an attempt and playing the ball, it actually should have been a red card. Not only was it neither a red card or yellow card, but even the penalty was gone. And we've said this time and time again. As soon as you get called over to the principal's office, basically, and the voice from above comes down that says, hey, we think that you made a mistake here. We've seen time and time again where referees, they don't want to stand on what they made and some of it's absolutely justified because you can't see everything that's happening in real time. And so you see something and say, yeah, I missed that. This one, I think nobody would have complained ultimately if she continued on. Was it soft? Yes, but you cannot be a little pregnant, my friend.
In the first half, there was a play where Spain had 2 straight shots off the post, and then it came back, and it hit a Dutch player in the arm when they were lying on the ground. We all thought, looking at it, that should have been a penalty. Dr. Joe Macknick came in and said no. That was an interesting one as well.
The only reason why I think it should have been is because you said she was lying on the ground. Actually, if you see it, she went to ground and then was getting up and used her arm. Now, Dr. Joe will say that the ball hit her arm, the movement of the arm didn't justify that. We've seen this call before, and I would have had no problem had they called it. Because in that moment of getting up, you certainly made yourself bigger, even though you're on the ground. So it's no longer about sliding, because they talk about bracing yourself, and I completely understand that. But in this moment, she had already gone to ground. Now she was getting up, and not only as she was getting up, she made herself bigger, and in doing so, prevented the ball from going to the opposition that would have been an easy goal. And so, I disagree. But again, it is a subjective type of thing. They looked at it, they didn't think so, and off we go. What's next?
Stephanie van der Graaf had a really eventful day.
Yes.
She gives away a penalty needlessly by sticking her arm out. No doubt about that decision, which also came about after a VAR review. And she's a defender. And then the Dutch coach made a very intelligent sub, brought in the defender, moved her up the field, and lo and behold, she scores this fantastic equalizer.
By the way, did you see that finish? I mean, I don't think we actually did it justice in the broadcast, where that was from a long way out, and she didn't even hesitate. And we've seen this in different times where the ball just goes up. It all has to go just a millimeter up, and you can get some real good meat on it. And she smacks this one to the far post. But to your point, coaching. You put a center back up in the moment that you need a goal, and she comes through. So, I mean, she went from the villain with the handball, which is a handball, nobody was questioning that, to the hero on the other end. But then ultimately it didn't work out for them.